All right, I think we're ready to get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the deep dive. Today is Monday, March 17th. My name is Alex Rousey. I'm the research manager here at Keeping Current Matters. And thank you for starting your week with us here on the deep dive. We do this every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and it's our goal to start the week off with one of the most important topics in real estate for you. So we really appreciate you being here and starting your week off with us. We're going to get right into it. What I'm going to do is share my screen here, and we will talk about what our topic is for today. What we're going to be going over is the fact that mega investors aren't buying up all the homes. This is an incredibly timely topic. It's something that we have seen floating around on social media for about a year now. And it's something that we really want to kind of put this myth to bed and help you be able to sort of clear up and present the facts so that the buyers in your community understand what's actually happening with investor activity and why it's not the barrier to home ownership that many people feel like it is. This is something, like I said, that we have been seeing all over social media for about a year now. And we know that your buyers are seeing this too. And a lot of them are feeling kind of dejected at the thought that Wall Street and mega investors like BlackRock are buying up all the homes and making it impossible for the average buyer to really get into the market. And that's not the case. And especially with the way the market is changing as we get into spring, we want to make sure that the buyers that you work with understand the opportunities that they have this season and know that this is just one less thing for them to worry about, because it's not necessarily the case right now. What I want to do is start off with a quote that kind of explains what this problem is in the mind of buyers and how this sort of thing took hold on social media and became such a ingrained thought in people that are entering the real estate market right now. So here's this quote. It's from the Mortgage Reports, kind of lays out what the issue is. The problem is that by purchasing existing homes rather than building new ones, investors increase competition for available properties, which can drive up prices. This heightened demand without a corresponding increase in supply puts additional pressure on an already limited housing inventory. You think about that, what we just went over there, and it makes perfect sense. Anytime you have a large corporation that owns thousands of homes entering the market and buying some of what's available, that's naturally going to reduce inventory and drive up prices. And so logically, it makes sense that you would feel like, if I'm seeing that there are large corporations from Wall Street that are entering the real estate market, that naturally that's going to make things more difficult for me. So you can understand why this is something that would be noteworthy for anyone who's thinking about buying a home. But what's key to understand is, even though this can technically be true, are mega investors and investors in general buying up enough homes that it would have a substantial impact on the average home buyer who is going into the market and wondering what's going to be available in their area? And that's what we're going to try to figure out right here together today. I'll start with a graph that uses information from Redfin. And this shows how investor purchases have changed over time, going back to the first quarter of 2020. Now, this graph represents all investor types. So that's all the way from the large investors that own thousands of homes down to people that you probably know, maybe people that live in your neighborhood that are your neighbors that own just a couple of homes in town and rent them out. So all investors combined, what you can see here is investor purchases really took off pretty sharply throughout 2021, right to the start of 2022, where the average there in Q3 of 2021, investors were buying about 100,000 homes. And it makes sense when you think about it, because we remember back during 2021 that mortgage rates were low. And not only were investors happy to take advantage of favorable terms in the market, but so were all home buyers. And so investor purchases naturally went up as things were more favorable. They could buy homes with a lower rate and then turn around and rent those out or sell them and make a profit. But what else you'll know is that throughout the course of 2022, those investor purchases dropped off dramatically. And we all can remember 2022 is the year when mortgage rates doubled. It was the most dramatic rise in mortgage rates that we've seen. So naturally, investors, just like any other home buyer, pulled back because it was more difficult and more expensive to buy a home. Rates weren't as favorable for them. And then we can see that investor purchases have kind of just stayed there in the 50,000 purchases per quarter range over the past couple of years. Another thing that you'll notice, the most recent information that we have, Q4 of 2024, you can see that investors are buying less than half of the homes that they were buying at their peak in Q3 of 2021. So there was a huge drop off in 2022. Things have been fairly stable for the past couple of years, where investor purchases are actually half of what they were during their peak. Something else that's important to understand about this and be able to explain to your buyers is it makes sense that this idea that Wall Street was buying all the homes entered the minds of so many buyers, because in 2021, investor purchases did skyrocket. And back then, inventory was lower than it is now. So investors buying 100,000 homes per quarter at a time when inventory was already much lower than it is now, that's going to have a fairly more substantial impact on the market. And that's something that people started hearing about. And so that has started to kind of be ingrained in social media and in buyers' minds to where they feel like this is just fact without having the most recent information to show that investor purchases have actually dropped off quite a bit. So overall, inventory is less than half of where it was at the peak when we look at all investor types. But what we want to do is really focus on mega investors, institutional investors. These are large corporations, Wall Street, that you've probably heard, that own over 1,000 single family homes. These are the ones that make the headlines, make the rounds on social media, that so many people feel like they've heard of, that are buying all these homes in the market. And what's important to understand is those mega investors that make up the headlines really are a very, very tiny portion of the real estate market. This is from Thomas Malone, economist at CoreLogic. He says, while institutional investors tend to dominate headlines, they account for only a small fraction of total investor activity. Most real estate investors are mom and pop landlords who own 3 to 10 properties. So the way we like to think about that is what you see on social media as investors, what your buyers are seeing on social media as investors, is naturally being painted as large villainous corporations that buy up thousands of homes, when in reality, most people who are investors are just your neighbors who owned a home and decided to move up and rent out their first home, stuff like that. We have numbers to actually put to this to really illustrate just how small of a portion of the market large mega institutional investors are taking up. This is from the mortgage reports, and it says, on average, small investors, those that own 3 to 10 properties like your neighbors, account for around 18% of the market, while mega investors represent only about 1%. So this is a little bit of trouble in your mind to imagine that companies that are buying thousands of homes, way more than the average investor down the street, are actually accounting for such a small portion of the market. But it's true. Only about 1% of purchases are made by the large mega institutional investors. So before, the graph that we looked at overall investor activity to just see sort of how the market ebbed and flowed as rates changed through 2021 and into 2022. But let's really zero in on just the mega investors from Wall Street. What's happened with their purchases over time? This comes from Resi Club, and it's quoting research from John Burns Research and Consulting. And it shows that institutional landlords, those, like I explained earlier, that owned at least 1,000 single-family homes, still largely remain sidelined, only making up 0.3% of U.S. home sales in Q3 of 2024, compared to 2.2% in Q3 of 2021, and the all-time high of 2.4% in Q2 of 2022. So a few things right away. Mega investor purchases have obviously declined quite a bit. When at their peak, they're 2.4% of all purchases. And right now, as of Q3 2024, they're down to 0.3%. That's a dramatic drop off. But this is a trend that actually goes back further than just the peak of Q2 2022. This is from Realtor.com. It says, if you strip out the second and third quarter of 2020, we know the housing market was in chaos at that time. COVID-19 lockdowns effectively froze housing transactions. Big investor home purchasing activity has dropped to its lowest share in 7 years. Here's what that looks like. This is information. This is a graph that you're really going to want to put out there. As a reminder, if you're a KCM member, you have access to all of this with your membership. If you're not, if you're joining us and you're just kind of wondering what KCM is all about, we encourage you, try kcm.com, be able to download all of these slides and use them, download them, put them on your phone and use them in conversation with your buyers and sellers this spring. What this shows is the information that we just went over from John Burns and Resi Club, but going all the way back to 2018. And we can see a few obvious trends. This is the share of home purchases by just those large mega institutional landlords that own 1,000 plus properties. And over the past 3 years, going back to Q3 of 2021, there's a very obvious trend where large mega investors are purchasing fewer and fewer homes on the market. Another thing that we can see is that in Q3 of 2024, at 0.3% of all purchases, that is the lowest share of purchases by mega investors going back at least to 2018. So really, investors, the large scale investors from Wall Street, are a very, very minor portion of the market right now. And even at their peak in Q3 of 2021, and we saw on the previous slide in Q2 of 2021, it peaked at 2.4%. So even at their peak, just a little over 2% of all purchases made by large-scale investors. So we've gone from what was never that large of a market share, just over 2%, and dropped from small to tiny at 0.3%. This is the kind of information you want to share with buyers because it's become so ingrained in the mindset of people entering the real estate market. There's a lot of great news for buyers as we enter the spring, and rates have come down a little bit and inventory is ticking up. And so this is something that you don't want people to be just sort of put off by the real estate market before they even see what's available, because they just think, I have no chance. Inventory is low. Wall Street's buying up all the homes. That's not the case. Share this information with them so they understand this is just one thing that you do not need to be worried about as you're coming into the market, and that things are really turning in favor of buyers that you're working with. What we've done is we've looked at information now for the most recent information we have going all the way back to 2018. But what about moving forward? This isn't just a message that you should be able to share for the next couple of weeks. This is something that we think will hold throughout the rest of this year. And the way that we can tell is there is a quarterly survey of investors that we pay attention to each quarter. It's called the Investor Sentiment Index. And this gives us an idea of how investors are feeling about the real estate market moving forward. So we can sort of project, are these purchases going to start taking off again? Is this going to be something that is more of an issue for buyers later this year and into next year? Or are things going to stay about how they have been? So this survey, the Investor Sentiment Index, is put on by RCN Capital and CJ Patrick Company. And what they do is each quarter, they ask investors, real estate investors, about 4 specific things. They ask them for their current market outlook. How are they feeling about the real estate market compared to a year ago? They ask them, what's your opinion on the future market outlook? Do you feel like things will be better 6 months from today? Maybe you're more likely to purchase more homes and add them to your portfolio. The third thing is expected home price increases. So are you expecting that prices will go up or down over the next 6 months? And the last thing is number of properties compared to the past 12 months. Do you feel like you're likely to purchase more homes as an investor in the next 12 months than you did in the last 12 months, or fewer homes? And what they do is they take the answers to all 4 of these questions and they put them together into an index each quarter so we can kind of get a feel for where investors' minds are at. Here's what that index looks like going back to Q2 of 2023. We have the line there at 100 on the index bolded because 100 is the middle point of this index. So whenever the index falls below 100, in general, investors are feeling pessimistic about the market. When the index is above 100, investors are feeling optimistic about the market. You'll notice a few things right away. First off, investor sentiment really went up a lot the first 3 quarters of 2024. A big part of that is, if you'll recall, most mortgage rate forecasts in the middle of 2024 were very positive for 2025, expecting that rates could end the year even below 6%. So investors were feeling very favorable about the market moving forward with the expectation that maybe rates are going to come down, activity is going to pick up, it's going to be more affordable for me to buy homes and add them to my portfolio. But what you'll also notice is at the last survey of the year, the most recent one we have, investor sentiment tanked and has gone actually below 100 there. So investors are now feeling sort of pessimistic about the market. And why is that? Despite the fact that rates have improved some over the past couple of months, most forecasts now expect rates will end the year around 6.5%. So there should be some decent mortgage rate news as we move throughout the year, but very few people are expecting them to go as low as they were thinking a few months ago even. Naturally, investor sentiment based on that has responded accordingly. So as of right now, with the most recent information we have for how investors are feeling about the market moving forward, there's no reason to expect that investor purchases are going to take off again this year. So you remember we saw 0.3% of all purchases being made by mega investors in Q3 of last year. There's no reason to expect that to really take off this year unless something in the real estate market really has a drastic, unexpected change. So you're going to be able to finally put this myth to bed by sharing a couple of pieces of your KCM membership with your buyers and show them once and for all that no, Wall Street is not buying up all the homes. This is just one less barrier that any buyer who's thinking about entering the market has to deal with. The first thing that you can do and that you should do is record and share your Real Talk script on this topic. It's been in your app for a couple of weeks now. Are investors buying up all the homes? Let's look at the facts. You can see there it only takes 30 seconds to record. And it's going to use that last graph that we went over showing that institutional investors are buying fewer homes, going down from 2.2% down to only 0.3% of all home purchases in Q3 of 2024. Hopefully, by putting this out there, you can show folks that this is not something that's accurate now, even though it maybe felt like it was a couple of years ago, and that the market has changed to where this is not something to be concerned with anymore. Especially, like I said earlier, as the market is turning more and more in buyers' favor, you want them to be able to see, hey, inventory is up, prices haven't been skyrocketing, there are opportunities for you in this market. Take a look and don't be immediately put off by the thought that Wall Street's buying up all the homes, because it's just not the case right now. Something else you can do to really engage with people is to use our social media graphic. Share your KCM social media graphic. Again, it's the same graph. I promise you that if you share this on social media, you will get engagement. This is something that has been very prominent in the minds of buyers for the past year, even year and a half. And seeing this is going to surprise a lot of people. And they're going to have questions for you, and they're going to want to talk to you about this and say, is this true? Is this true in our local market? Do you have other information you can provide? And based on what we've gone over today, the slides that you have at your fingertips now from this presentation, we have blogs, we have Real Talk. You can be able to explain exactly what's been happening and sort of have conversations with buyers and maybe change their mindset so that they understand I have an opportunity right now. And this is one less thing that's really holding me back that maybe I felt like was holding me back before. So we've sort of covered all the information, all the research. You have a couple of actionable items so you can get engagement and start some conversations with buyers and just finally put this myth to bed once and for all. We'll end this as we usually do with every day here at Keeping Current Matters. What we're all focused on is the fact that most agents know what's happening. Good agents understand what's happening, but only great agents can explain what's happening. And now that you've gone through this presentation, you have the facts at your fingertips. You have ways to share them and start conversations around this topic and let your buyers know there are opportunities for them this spring. Hopefully you can go out there and explain what's happening, and we'll do just that and engage with those in your community who are thinking about buying a home. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We'll be back next Monday, March 24th, again, 11 a.m. Eastern, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great week.